Joining us to discuss the implications of the political landscape in France is Romain Le Quiniou, Managing Director of Eurocreative. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, thank you.
So now we've heard recently that the French Interior Minister has warned about potential risk of violence associated with snap elections. So does it mean heightened tensions and security concerns also as well? How do you see this situation unfolding?
Well, yes, it's a declaration that has been made recently. We don't really know for the moment, but these elections are happening in a very tense period. And the fact that he say that is there are some group of violent group, I would say, on both extreme sides of the political spectrum, both from the extreme right as well as from the extreme left. Violent groups that can be in the street and that can try to create some chaos. There are small groups, but of radical individuals. But we have to remind also that France is in a very tense security situation for the simple reason that France has been at the center of terrorist threats for many years now and is preparing to welcome the Olympic Games. So this is, of course, an additional concern, basically, for the security forces here in France, who are already on alert for several months.
So now, given what you just said, the fact that that France has elections coming up, that the Olympic Games are also set to take place, how is the security dealing with all these issues? What are some plans or some kind of protocols that have been put into place?
Special protocols, not really, because it's about the security of France, internal security, and the protocols are already there. There are protocols when it comes to counter-terrorism, for sure, and France has been preparing itself for many years now to welcome the Olympic Games. France is used to welcome important sports events. But also France has unfortunately been prepared for many years for the simple reason that France has faced terrorist violence, terrorist attacks by different individuals, by different groups. We remember, of course, the tragic terrorist attacks in November 2015 in the Bataclan and other places in Paris. So Paris is unfortunately used to these security problems. Now, to have special protocols during the election, I would say that it's nothing special. Protocols against violence, against radical groups already exist, and the security forces will be on alert after the first round, as well as during the week between the two rounds and after the second round. And for the moment, there is no specific expectation of increased violence, but we need to remain on alert.
So now I would want us to perhaps take a closer look at possible scenarios of the outcome of these elections. Now, 4 scenarios are being considered by the analysts for the upcoming French elections, which include a continued political deadlock. Now, a second thing would be a shift towards a more radical government. The third is emergence of a centrist coalition. And the fourth, a significant shift towards the right. So, of course, each scenario carries different consequences for governance and policy making in France. But which one do you think, to your mind, is the most likely to happen?
Well, it's always difficult to basically imagine and to say that this or that scenario will happen. But if we try to leave expectations and go back more into reality, there are some polls at the moment that are being screened, that are being sent to the media, sent to the people. And if we see these polls, I would say that the most likely scenario at the time as we speak is a hung parliament, for the simple reason that the 3 blocs that have emerged from this pre-election campaign are not making into numbers. So you have the left pole, the coalition between the extreme left to the Socialist Party. You have the center bloc made of Prime Minister Attal and his allies of Macron. From the center left, from the center right, and then you have the bloc of the radical right with the National Rally. These blocks don't make it in numbers. The first one is credited by the polls is the National Rally, but they are falling short with the seats. So we are planning for the National Rally between 230 to 260 seats, and it's not enough to have the majority. Then the second scenario, I would say, would be the possibility for the National Ally to obtain a full majority. Even if they are not making the numbers right now, we can see that there is a tendency to grow over the past few days, and this is a possibility that the polls are expecting. It's very difficult for me to think that a central coalition made of Macron's allies as well as parties from the left, we can imagine the Socialist Party, and from the right, the Republicans, I don't see it happen. I don't see it happen in numbers, but I don't see it happen politically as well. It's been impossible to make some sustainable coalition within the parliament over the past 2 years, and even before the elections in the past 3 weeks, it was not possible to ally. The Socialist Party is in a coalition with the extreme left. Meanwhile, the Republicans are running alone. So I don't see it happening, and we will see with the polls. I have to remind, of course, that legislative general elections in France are a bit specific. So we cannot say that national polls are to be exactly right about the situation on the 30th of June. But they give us an indication, and the indication is that we are going to have a very separated political scheme after the elections between three blocs.
So now, given what you just said about these three specific blocs after the elections, what do you think might be the implications for France's foreign and defense policies, especially when it comes to Ukraine? Might we see some kind of change there?
Well, again, if we took the two scenarios that I said can be the most likely, on the one hand, you have a scenario of hung parliament, and this is a problem because it will bring to France not only political instability but potentially institutional instability. So we are not sure that in this situation what will happen. We can have the continuation of the current government for a few weeks, a few months maybe. We could have a technical government, but it's very undecided of what will exactly happen. What will be the position of President Macron? I have to remind, of course, that in France, the person that has the most power when it comes to foreign defense and security is the president. But what will be his role in the middle of a political, if not institutional, crisis? The problem is also that to function and to make a defense and security policy happening and being implemented on the ground, you need to vote a budget. And again, if we have an unstable situation with no government at sight or no political majority in the National Assembly, it's very uncertain how we will be able to vote the budget in the autumn. And this is a concern. Well, now, if we look at the second scenario, on the other hand, the potential majority, absolute majority from the National Ally, it's very concerning as well. We know very much how the National Ally and Marine Le Pen have been close to Moscow over the past few years, historically. We know about scandals about financing of the party from Russian banks. We know the proximity of specific political personality from this movement to Russian oligarchs, to Russian politicians. I mean, we can mention for sure one of the key figures of the National Ally, who is Thierry Mariani, a member of the European Parliament, is one of the symbols of this proximity to Russia. We know that many candidates that are being aligned today by the National Ally in these elections have been observers of the so-called elections in Crimea, organized, manipulated by Russia. So we can see that the National Ally is a concern when it comes to Ukraine, when it comes to Russia, because of its proximity to Russia. We know the declarations that have been made over the past few years. Before 2022, the National Ally, Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella were extremely pro-Russian. They were calling for the cessation of the fights by a defeat for Ukraine. They were advocating for the end of the sanctions towards Russia. And then only since 2022, their rhetoric has softened. But as we know in Europe and in the West more generally, it's not because you soften your rhetoric towards Russia that you are not anymore pro-Russian, just like this overnight. So we know the connections. we know the positions of the National Ally, and of course, for Ukraine, a victory of the National Ally, as well as a hung parliament, is a very big concern.
So looking at the situation and the question of the outcome of these elections is still an open one, and the ballots will have to speak up for themselves. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us and for your input on this situation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.